morning from Mission Control Houston and welcome to Space Station Live. It's Thursday, November 21st, 2013. You're looking down inside of the International Space Station Flight Control Room located at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Inside the room right now sits the Orbit 2 team controlling systems on board the orbiting laboratory. They're being led right now by Flight Director Emily Nelson, and at the Capcom position speaking with the astronauts will be Hal Getzelman, serving as the communication link between all of our controllers down here on the ground and the astronauts up in space. And those astronauts right now are the crew of Expedition 38, comprised of 3 Russian crew members, 2 Americans, and 1 Japanese astronaut on board. You can see them here going across the back row. Russian cosmonaut Mikhail Turin on the left there. NASA astronaut Rick Mastracchio next to him. Another Russian cosmonaut Sergei Rosansky, and Mike Hopkins, another NASA astronaut, all the way on the right. In the front row, 2 commanders of the expedition of the International Space Station. On the right, Oleg Kotov, current Expedition 38 commander. On the left, in the front row, Koichi Wakata, who will take command of the International Space Station during Expedition 39. On board, the regular contingent of experiment and maintenance work taking place on board the station as it orbits 260 miles over the Earth's surface. Starting off with Expedition 38 Commander Oleg Kotov, who's installing a new communication unit inside of the Zvezda service module over on the Russian segment. He'll also be doing some routine maintenance work in one of the Russian docking compartments known as Poisk, or the Mini Research Module 2, and that'll be taking up most of his day today. Meanwhile, Russian Sergei Rosansky is doing some work known as fungostat treatment, some routine work to coat the surfaces inside of the International Space Station to make them more resistant to any microbes that may accumulate over time. He'll be working inside of the Zarya module, which just yesterday celebrated its 15th anniversary since launch in the beginning of the International Space Station in space. Meanwhile, NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins, upon waking up this morning, taking a number of blood samples and other biological samples for a few studies on board for the Human Research Facility and also the Pro-K experiment, a dietary experiment which looks at decreasing the ratio between protein and potassium in the astronauts' diet to try and combat the bone loss that the astronauts are typically subjected to while in microgravity for long durations of time. Aside from that, also doing some more astronaut health studies today as Hopkins will be doing some ocular health scans using the station's fundoscope to do scans of his eyes, and also joining him in those scans will be his fellow NASA astronaut Rick Mastracchio and Japanese astronaut Koichi Wakata. The third Russian on board, Mikhail Turin, started off his day working on the Russian virtual experiment, which looks to gather new data on the mechanisms of sensory interaction and sensory adaptation for these astronauts, how well they're able to adapt during their long-duration space missions. Also doing 2 Earth study experiments today. First off, the SINER, which looks to document and track bioproductive areas of the world's oceans for scientific research and also for commercial fishing. Also working on the Uragan experiment, which uses the International Space Station's unique vantage point to serve as a monitoring system for areas where natural and man-made disasters are forecasted, and helping to relay information to authorities whenever these unfavorable events transpire. Meanwhile, NASA astronaut Rick Mastracchio on board today, conducting a photo survey of some of the external station structures as part of a regular maintenance activity to routinely document the outer portions of the station. He'll also be doing those ocular checkouts alongside Hopkins and Wakata as mentioned. Then Koichi Wakata on board today is continuing with the circadian rhythms experiment, which he began towards the end of his day yesterday, and will continue on through the morning tomorrow. We'll hear more about that experiment later, which looks to track the astronaut sleep cycles throughout their long-duration missions. Wakata also continuing his work with the capillary flow experiment, fluid physics experiment on board that looks to investigate the force known as capillary force, which in the absence of gravity is a powerful tool for transitioning fluids along different delivery systems. So that experiment today also looking at effectively separating fluids from gases, a very important component in the design of spacecraft fuel systems, also other liquid delivery systems such as water for crew consumption or experiments on board. You can see another picture of that capillary flow experiment here.